Or through the French Antilles, Guadeloupe is back on alert. This time, it's Maria bearing down on the islands of the Caribbean. As of Monday, a Category 1 hurricane, Maria is expected to quickly gain strength through Wednesday.
Just hours ago, we measured winds at 200 kilometers an hour, with a lot of water, and stronger than Hurricane Irma. So obviously, it's going to be a difficult episode.
Hurricane Maria is moving along approximately the same track as Irma. It's expected to strike the southern Leeward Islands, including Antigua and Barbuda, on Monday night. On St. Martin, residents are still digging out. 2/3 of homes on the Dutch side of the island were left uninhabitable by Irma's destruction. The French side of the island suffered an estimated 1.2 billion euros in damage. 11 people lost their lives across the French Antilles. The U.S. National Hurricane Center says that Maria has sustained winds of over 130 kilometers per hour. The storm's surge could raise water levels by over 2 meters, with a maximum potential rainfall of over 50 centimeters. In all, Irma claimed at least 37 lives and caused billions of dollars worth of damage across the Caribbean. And hurricane season isn't over yet.
We already have school closures because of Hurricane Jose's effects. Cape Hatteras Secondary School and Cape Hatteras Elementary School will be closed today.
Dare County officials tweeted the notice last night. They canceled classes because of the effects of Jose along the Outer Banks. Happening right now, we're just starting to feel the impact of Jose. All weekend, lifeguards had the red flags flying at the Virginia Beach oceanfront.
The waves are so strong, it is just too dangerous to swim right now. 10 on your sides, Rico Bush is back out there this morning, and we do expect conditions to get worse. Rico, how's it looking right now?
Well, Lexon, it is pretty dark outside right now, but we are seeing some of those conditions that forecasters are warning about. Behind me, you may be able to make out some of that rough surf and rip currents. Beach officials say they don't want anyone to swim in those type of conditions. If you are out, lifeguards say they want you to make those safe decisions. We've been seeing the dangerous conditions at the beach all weekend, and it's going to get worse, as you mentioned, over the next couple of days as the storm charges off the East Coast. Lifeguards say think twice before heading into the water and take the warning seriously. They want people to enjoy the beach, but also go home safely.
I may not actually get in and swim, but that's perfectly okay with me.
You know, we're trying to stay as safe as possible yet, though, and still enjoy our vacation.
As we mentioned, red flag warnings are up at the beach. They will likely be up for the next couple of days as Jose swirls up the East Coast. Now, beach officials say starting this week in particular, it may be risky to get in the water, and that is regardless of this storm that's here on the East Coast, and I'll explain why at 5:30.
Also tonight, one earthquake after another shaking the South Bay, and there was just another one about an hour ago. KPIX5's Maria Medina is live in East San Jose near the epicenter of the tremors. Maria?
Well, Liz, that last one, a magnitude 2.8, and some people are asking, you know, what is the big deal? Well, we've had not one, not two, but 6 quakes in the same area just today.
I felt it. It just felt like it was light shaking.
Becky Fan not only felt the 3.3 quake just before she left work tonight.
They were like, is that an earthquake? And then, you know, I was looking around.
She also felt the 3.3 quake this morning around 10:30.
This one was pretty mild for California standards.
And she's right. The quakes didn't appear to do any damage, but it's what many who felt them were talking about, including our own Len Ramirez, who tweeted, "Just felt an earthquake, first one in a long time. Lasted about 3 to 4 seconds." Another tweeted, "This earthquake in San Jose is freaking me out." And, "So there was an earthquake today. Should I be worried?" The USGS says 6 quakes hit the East Foothill since this morning, 4 of them strong enough to feel. The USGS says the tremors happened between the Hayward and Calaveras faults. But is the swarm unusual? The USGS says no, because small earthquakes happen all the time.
Well, actually, I think it's better if you get a bunch of small ones, because I've heard that if you have smaller ones, it kind of alleviates the pressure.
And the USGS confirms Becky is correct. Small quakes do help relieve pressure on the Bay Area's very active faults.
We just have to hope for the best and be prepared.
And get this, the USGS says there is a 72% chance the Bay Area will get hit with a magnitude 6.7 earthquake or greater within the next 3 decades.
Typhoon Talim, now a tropical storm, has battered southwestern Japan, leading to flight cancellations and train disruptions. Hundreds of thousands of residents are being ordered or advised to evacuate. Noara reports.
The storm made landfall on the southern island of Kyushu over the weekend, bringing heavy rains and high winds. It moved onto Hyogo Prefecture in the west of the country on Sunday night and clocked winds of up to 100 kilometers per hour at its center. Local media are reporting that there have been just over a dozen injuries as a result of the storm. The Kyushu Electric Power Company says nearly 1,500 homes across 3 of the island's prefectures are without power. More than 800 flights have been cancelled and train operations, including the Shinkansen bullet train services in Kyushu, have been suspended. By Monday morning, Talim had brought record hourly rainfall of 100 to 120 millimeters to Hokkaido. Weather authorities say Tropical Storm Talim is now moving northeast at about 80 kilometers per hour and is expected to drench northern Japan with heavy rain by Monday evening, including Tokyo. Landslide and flood warnings have also been issued for many prefectures across the country.
This is what the southern coasts of Athens have looked like for the past 2 days. These sandy beaches should have been full of holidaymakers, but they're empty and stained with thick oil.
We came here for a 2-week vacation and there is no chance we will be able to swim, at least not here.
It all started on Sunday when a tanker anchored off the shores of Salamina sank. The cause isn't yet known, but the island has suffered the greatest damage, with 2.5 kilometers of its coastline covered in oil. And people here say the cleanup process isn't moving fast enough.
We demand more cleaning equipment and human resources, because for the local community, it's not only a matter of environmental destruction, but also a matter of economic destruction.
The Greek authorities say their response has been prompt and effective. 20 boats and several oil tankers have been used in operations to seal the vessel, control the oil spill, and decontaminate seawater.
The development of this operation is very positive. There's a noticeable improvement every day. As I said, it takes a colossal effort.
According to the shipping ministry, it will take about 30 days to deal with the contamination. Cleaning crews like the one behind me are battling against time to contain the spill before it hits other coastal areas. But environmental organizations say a lot of valuable time has already been lost.
It's been already 5 days since the beginning of the incident. Every day that passes, it's a very critical day because the oil remains in the sea, and this creates a big problem, as it will be almost impossible to withdraw all the quantity that was spilled in the first place.
The Greek authorities have been criticized for their response to this disaster. And many people here are asking what would happen if a much bigger oil tanker went down in a less accessible area in this region.
Well, we begin this half hour with the continuing threat from Hurricane Harvey. The storm made landfall 3 weeks ago today. Harvey and the resulting floods caused more than 70 deaths and damaged or destroyed more than 250,000 homes.
Now, as Houston and its surrounding areas begin to recover, people there are taking steps to head off a potential health threat. Omar Villafranca reports.
Harris County bug experts are on a seek and destroy mission. The mosquito population is expected to explode after Hurricane Harvey left behind countless pools of stagnant water.
So this is where they breed.
Mustafa Daban, director of mosquito control for Harris County, says these are the perfect breeding conditions.
How many mosquitoes could these two tires breed?
Over 500 to 600, 700, because a mosquito will lay a lot of eggs.
To combat the threat of diseases like West Nile and Zika, an all-out assault has been launched. On the ground, Harris County trucks have sprayed more than 70,000 acres. And for the past several nights, Air Force Reserve C-130 planes have flown over southeast Texas, spraying an EPA-approved mosquito-killing chemical. The aerial bombardments have treated more than 2 million acres of Harris and other counties. That's more than 10 times the size of New York City. But county officials say they can only do so much and need the help of residents. Homeowners have hired personal mosquito squads like Corey Barkham, who says he's been going nonstop.
It was priced before the storm. Now phone calls are, when can you get to us? Can you do it tomorrow? Can you do it today?
One of the biggest problem areas are private swimming pools like this one. Many were flooded during the storm and have now become breeding grounds for mosquitoes. Officials are urging residents to treat their own pools so they can stop the growing mosquito problem.
16 deaths have been reported in San Diego County stemming from an outbreak of hepatitis A. According to local health officials, 292 people have been hospitalized. There are more than 400 cases overall, leading officials to declare a local public health emergency in early September, the LA Times reports. People in the area are being encouraged to wash their hands regularly since hepatitis A is shared by contact.
Following up, we're learning more about yesterday's earthquake off Oahu. The Hawaii Volcanoes Observatory's seismic network says the quake was likely due to bending of the oceanic plate, but we're not in any kind of danger. The 4.2 magnitude quake struck at about 8:40 last night. It was centered about 20 miles off the windward side and about 6 miles deep. Hundreds of people reported feeling the quake, most in Kaneohe and Kailua. Just 4 days prior, on Monday, a 2.3 magnitude quake struck nearby, about 10 miles away from last night's quake.
Mauna Loa's last eruption was in 1984. Scientists are certain it will erupt again. It's just a matter of when. So what's being done to keep a closer eye on Mauna Loa? Jenna Boniza is getting you answers tonight. Jen?
Mahalo, Joe. I learned that Mauna Loa is already outfitted with dozens of sensors. USGS tells me 2 new sensors are being installed. One will monitor gas emissions, the other will keep track of seismic activity. Hawaii Island has been under an advisory for the past 2 years, with Mauna Loa showing increased signs of restlessness. New sensors are being added to help monitor the activity. One sensor will monitor different gas emissions.
So as things change, as there are changes, subsurface changes in the volcano, we might expect to see changes in the types of gases that are emitted. And so now we will have a way to monitor that.
The second sensor will monitor earthquakes high on the east flank.
It's also pretty close to the summit of Mauna Loa, so it's only about 6 kilometers away from the summit caldera. So it'll be our closest station to the summit.
I'm told most of Mauna Loa's eruptions started at its summit. One of the most obvious signs before an eruption is an increase in earthquakes, similar to what we've seen in the last 2 years.
Since 2015, earthquakes have increased at Mauna Loa, and the mountain has begun expanding a little bit, which we can interpret as magma movement underground.
If
something were to happen, how much of a warning do you think you would be able to give the people living on the Big Island?
Well, that's a very good question. It's not possible to predict exactly what's going to happen, but there are usually signs ahead of time. Earthquakes, in particular, are a good way to do that because earthquakes can occur when magma and lava start to move around as they come up to the surface.
I'm told the 1984 eruption threatened Hilo, but another eruption could threaten any number of communities.
It hasn't erupted in about a generation now, but it will erupt again. We need to be ready for that. There's no sign that an eruption's imminent. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in another 10 years. We don't know.
Hurricane Irma's impact on Florida has taken many forms, including deaths, massive destruction, and power outages. And today, it manifested itself in the form of a giant sinkhole caused by stormwater. The jagged cavity opened up behind the middle school in Apopka, devouring a chunk of West Orange Trail. People are being asked to steer clear of the area.
The worldwide salmon industry is trying to find a solution to a billion-dollar problem, a surge of sea lice. The parasites attach themselves and feed on the salmon, killing them or making them unsuitable for consumption. Once controlled through pesticides, sea lice have now grown resistant, and new approaches are needed to help keep them in check.
We're farmers, not fishermen, farmers. And this is absolutely a farming issue. And we're trying to deal with it the same way every other farmer that grows all of our food would.
Cook Aquaculture, a Canadian company operating in New Brunswick, is trying several methods to kill the lice and save the salmon. On board the Colby Purse, 10,000 fish at a time are pumped into a solution of peroxide in water. It kills most of the lice, although it can also stress and kill some of the fish. A gentler approach is this thermal removal barge. It's better described as a water slide park for fish.
We pull up to a cage with salmon, and those salmon have some sea lice on them, and we try to use our fish pump to move them to the top of the slide. The fish travel down the slide, and while they do, they get a warm shower. The lice release from the fish, and then we put just the salmon back into a new pen.
Another approach uses cleaner fish to coexist with the salmon and eat the lice.
We think this is the way to go because it's non-chemical based and it's sustainable, it's a local species and we can get them from our waters and it is their natural habitat and it's quite easy to grow them.
While these methods may help deal with a problem, it's a global race to get ahead of it. Experts say defeating the lice will require new technologies and strategies, including through genetics.
По объектам террористов выпущено 7 крылатых ракет морского базирования «Калибр». Удар наносился по целям, разведанным и установленным по нескольким каналам. В результате удара уничтожены командные пункты боевиков, пункты управления и узел связи террористов, склад с боеприпасами и вооружением и скопление боевиков к юго-востоку от города Дерезор.
The president said last month that North Korea would face fire and fury if it continues to threaten the U.S. and its allies. Well, since the president said that, North Korea has really done nothing but threaten the U.S. and its allies. North Korea threatened Guam. North Korea fired 2 missiles over Japan and tested a hydrogen bomb. So was the president's fire and fury remark an empty threat?
It was not an empty threat. What we were doing was being responsible. Where North Korea is being irresponsible and reckless, we were being responsible by trying to use every diplomatic possibility that we could possibly do. We have pretty much exhausted all the things that we could do at the Security Council at this point. Now, I said yesterday, I'm perfectly happy kicking this over to General Mattis because he has plenty of military options. So I think that the fire and fury, while he said this is what we can do to North Korea, we wanted to be responsible and go through all diplomatic means to get their attention first. If that doesn't work, General Mattis will take care of it.
Well, by saying General Mattis will take care of it, you're talking about the Pentagon and you're talking about a military option. Is that what fire and fury meant?
You have to ask the president what fire and fury meant, but I think we all know that basically if North Korea keeps on with this reckless behavior, if the United States has to defend itself or defend its allies in any way, North Korea will be destroyed. And we all know that. And none of us want that. None of us want war. But we also have to look at the fact that you are dealing with someone who is being reckless, irresponsible, and is continuing to give threats not only to the United States, but to all of their allies. So something is going to have to be done. We're trying every other possibility that we have, but there's a whole lot of military options on the table.
We begin with that breaking news. Japanese television running urgent warnings at this hour after first reporting another missile launch from North Korea. Japanese TV reporting the missile has passed over Japanese airspace. Several population centers have been warned. The launch is yet another provocative move on the part of North Korea. So let's get right to ABC's David Curley following late developments from Washington. David.
Good evening, David. Very provocative. This missile traveled 2,300 miles and right over one of Japan's main islands.
It is the second North Korean missile to fly over Japan in the past month, an extremely aggressive move by Kim Jong-un. In Japan, alarms blaring, according to the Japanese media, which says the missile was launched near Pyongyang, passing over the Japanese island of Hokkaido, landing in the Pacific Ocean. According to the Japanese broadcaster NHK, no attempt was made to shoot down the missile. Just this afternoon, President Trump speaking aboard Air Force One, saying he's working with the Chinese on pressuring North Korea and trying to reassure Americans.
But believe me, the people of this country will be very, very safe.
The Pentagon says initial assessments suggest this was an intermediate range missile, not an intercontinental missile, which could reach the United States. Today's launch coming just days after the UN passed additional sanctions against North Korea. The launch comes less than 2 weeks after North Korea tested what it says is a hydrogen bomb, which can be mounted on an intercontinental ballistic missile. Its sixth and most powerful nuclear test.
Anti-police brutality protesters in the U.S. city of St. Louis have burst into violence, with demonstrators vandalizing the mayor's home at one point and assaulting law enforcement. 23 people were arrested, 10 officers injured. That unrest started after an ex-policeman was found not guilty of murdering a black motorist last year. Around 1,000 protesters have been out on the streets, with groups blocking at one point an intersection in the city's downtown area and gathering in front of the police department. Tear gas and pepper spray were used to try and disperse them earlier. Images have also emerged of demonstrators vandalising a police car too. RT America's Ashley Banks has been following what went on last evening.
Protests have erupted in the city of St. Louis, and the National Guard is on standby following the acquittal of former police officer Jason Stokely. 36-year-old Stokely was charged with first-degree murder in the case of 24-year-old Anthony Lamar Smith. Shortly after the verdict was passed down, several hundred protesters reportedly blocked a highway ramp and popular intersection near the courthouse as they marched through the city. Local news reports police deployed pepper spray against several protesters in the early afternoon. This verdict was handed down even despite calls for the officer's conviction from the Ethical Society of Police. According to the probable cause statement used in the case shortly before the incident, Stokely approached Smith's window, firing 5 times into the vehicle, hitting Smith with each shot and killing him. Additionally, prosecutors say a firearm was found in Smith's car, but it was later determined to only have the officer's DNA on it. Now, some activists in St. Louis, they pledged, quote, mass disruption if Stokely was acquitted, vowing that the outcome would look a lot like Ferguson. The potential for unrest has gripped the St. Louis region ever since Ferguson officer Darren Wilson shot and killed unarmed 18-year-old Michael Brown back in 2014.
Plumes of smoke blacken the skies above Marawi as government planes pummel the city with bombs. While on the ground, street-to-street fighting sends the sound of gunfire billowing out. The Philippine military pushes on with its bid to bring the 4-month siege of the city by Islamic State group sympathizers to an end. Their latest operation began on Saturday, and soldiers have already retaken a mosque that was of crucial importance to the militants.
During the Marawi siege, ito ang naging command center ng Maute terrorist group. In fact, we believe na dito nila tinago yung mga hostages nila. At nung kahapon po, nung na-recover po natin yung Bato Mosque, we encountered heavy resistance.
As government soldiers begin follow-up and clearance operations on the city's now heavily damaged streets, some of the 500,000 civilians forced from their homes because of earlier fighting have already started returning. The crisis began back in May when hundreds of armed militants from the Moat group captured the city. Clashes then broke out in the region following a failed raid by government soldiers on one of the insurgents' hideouts. That unrest led the president to declare martial law across the southern third of the country. Rodrigo Duterte's government says the battle to retake Marawi has already left over 600 jihadist fighters dead. But army commanders say the masterminds of the siege are still thought to be harbouring inside and that they could be holding over 40 hostages.